Hey, algebra students, I want to look at a couple of examples that might look intimidating, but are actually much simpler than they look. So it says you may use a calculator and the GED formula sheet for any of the following. And first one says evaluate the function for x is equal to 3.2. Two things to note about that. First thing is that it says evaluate the function. You might be saying, Kate, you haven't taught me what a function is yet. And that's true. I haven't taught you what a function is yet, but just to let you know, like a function is just a certain type of equation. And you really don't need to know that much about functions to see that here we've been given an equation, right? A left-hand side equal to a right-hand side. So they're asking me to evaluate this particular equation, which yes, does happen to be a function, and we're to evaluate it for x is equal to 3.2. So mystery solved. We know what x is. Now, what the next thing that might be scaring you is this, what we call function notation, f of x. You don't have to know much about this. You'll learn a lot about it in college and how to use it. But as far as we're concerned, f of x is just a formal name for y. It stands for the value of the function containing x. And so it's just way easier to just call it y. You can totally cross out f of x and write y if it scares you less that way. And now that you know that, I think we're ready. Let's just go ahead, store the value of x, then use our calculator to then substitute that x into the right-hand side, and then we'll know what f of x is equal to, or another way to say that, we'll know what y is equal to. Go for it, 3.2. We're going to go ahead and store that as the value x. Telling your calculator, every time you see an x, you may substitute in a 3.2. And now let us type that right-hand side. So negative 0.7, open up parentheses, and you can just go ahead and type an x, because using that store function, we're going to have the calculator substitute. Minus 0.1, and that whole thing needs to get squared. And that's going to be plus 4.5. Boom, calculator did it for me. This whole sucker is equal to negative 2.227. So the answer here is negative 2.227. Now, if you go look at my answer key, the answer might look a little weird to you because I wrote it using function notation, but you don't have to know this for the GED, but I'm a mathematician, so I spoke in a complete math sentence, so I don't want you to be confused. And your college professors are going to write this way. I don't want you to be confused then either. So again, this is function notation, okay? So just another way to say the same thing. So we said y is equal to negative 2.227. But another way of saying that is f of 3.2 is all that. Now you might say, I thought we already dealt with the 3.2. Yeah, this is not math to do. This says the function value, that's the f. And then they're telling you what x is when x is 3.2. So, you know, I'm a lazy mathematician. I'm not trying to write that full sentence. The function value when x is 3.2 is negative 2.227. So I just wrote f of 3.2 is negative 2.227. I spoke in a complete sentence in the language of math, but still, this is the part you need to understand as the answer. We've evaluated this function. Woo. Strong work. All right, let's look at the next one. The equation below can be used to find P of N, the minimum price at which a certain book must be sold. So they just told us what P of N is. P of N is the minimum price of our book. In order to break even when N copies are printed, they just told us what N is. N is the number of copies that we're printing of this book. And then it says, if 1,000 copies were printed, 1,000 copies were printed. Guys, they just told us a value of a variable. We said N was the number of copies that are printed. They're saying that N is 1,000. What is the minimum price point at which the book should be sold? So what's the thing we're looking for? We're looking for the minimum price. What did we say minimum price was? We said it was P of N. The problem told you this. So basically, you're looking for P of N, the function value, when we know N. Sounds a lot like the last example. So we can do it just like we did the last example. We could save a value for the variable, and then we could evaluate that right-hand side. P of n's already by itself, so all we need to do is evaluate. So let's try that method first, and then I'm going to try substituting and simplifying by hand for those of you who are college bound. First, let's just do all the work in our calculator. Now there's a trick to this one, because I do want to take 1,000 and I do want to store it in my calculator, but you're going to see my problem right away. If I want to store it as n, I'm in trouble. X, Y, Z, T, A, B, C, and look, X, Y, Z again. We don't have all the letters in the calculator. And so you would have to pick a different letter if you wanted to use this method. You're like, can I do that? Sure, as long as you're consistent. So instead of using n, I'll just go ahead and use x, okay? So every time I see an n in the problem, I'm going to write x in my calculator. So let's store 1,000 as an x. And then it's very easy to find out what P of n is equal to. I just have to type in the expression on the right-hand side. My calculator will put in that value for x, in this case, that I told it to use. I'll show you. So fraction bar, we'll do 6.2, and we're not going to find n. There is no n. So we had said we would use x plus 12,600. That's on the top, and that's going to be over, again, the variable. We chose to use x. Go ahead and press enter. And what is the minimum price point at which the book should be sold? Well, it's 18.8, but this is a price point, guys. So I'm talking about money. Okay, so if this is in dollars, let's think about it. We don't usually have one decimal place in dollars. We usually have 2 decimal places. So let's go ahead and put the number we're always allowed to have on the back of this. That's 0. So that's $18.80. That's the minimum we would have to sell. No wonder I'm losing money on the workbooks. This is actually anyway, sorry. This is the minimum price at which that book should be sold. Now, like I said, for college, you won't necessarily have this calculator, and you need to know how to do substitution by hand. So let's try it that way for those of you who are college bound. So yes, you would need to be able to do the substitution yourself. So you would need to be able to say, well, the function value when n is 1,000, so P of 1,000 is equal to 6.2. And again, everywhere I see n, I'm going to plug in 1,000 plus 12,600 all over. And that was an n, so now it'll say 1,000. And then P of 1,000, remember, it's not math to do, it's function notation. It says the function value when n is 1,000. And then this math up top, like seriously, we can plug this whole thing into our calculator for sure. No matter what calculator you have in your college class, it should be able to do this. So 6.2 times 1,000 plus 12,600, arrow down over 1,000. And I still see that the function value, or the price when we print 1,000 books, maybe that makes more sense to you. The price when we print 1,000 books is 18.8 or 1880. Nice. Doing some pretty simple algebra, not too bad, especially with the calculator, but really, really, really core skills if you're going to go on in mathematics at all past the GED. Proud of you guys. Strong work and happy learning.